Hi, my name is Selena Garcia. I will be talking about EMDR today. I'll be talking about what it is and who it benefits. I have always had interest in getting my EMDR certificate, so that is why I chose this as my project. Oh, sorry. So EMDR history. So in 1987, Francine Shapiro was walking in the park when she realized that eye movement appeared to decrease the negative emotions associated with her own distressing memories. She assumed that eye movements had a desensitizing effect, and when she experimented with this, she found that others also had the same response to eye movements. It became apparent, however, that eye movements by themselves did not create comprehensive therapeutic effects. And so Shapiro added other treatment elements, including a cognitive component, and developed a standard procedure that she called eye movement desensitization. So just to continue on the history. So Shapiro then conducted a case study and a controlled study to test the effectiveness of EMDR. In the control study, she randomly assigned 22 individuals with traumatic memories to two conditions. Half received EMDR and half received the same therapeutic procedure with imaginary and detailed description replacing the eye movements. She reported that EMDR resulted in a significant decrease in ratings of subject distress and significant increase in ratings of confidence in a positive belief. Participants in the EMDR condition reported significantly larger changes than those in the imaginary condition. Despite its demonstrated effectiveness, similar to most new approaches in psychotherapy, EMDR has been surrounded by controversy. While some critics have labeled EMDR as pseudoscience, others have commented that these conclusions are based on misinterpretations, of the literature. So information processing theory. So I found this really interesting because I knew kind of some of the history of EMDR, but I actually went in a rabbit hole when I was looking up stuff about EMDR and like researching it. And so one of the things I came about was information processing theory. So I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So I thought I would add that to my presentation. So Shapiro developed an information processing theory to explain and predict the treatment's effects seen within EMDR therapy. This theoretical model also described the development of personality, psychological problems, and mental disorders. The following is a simplified description of Shapiro's theory. So all humans are understood to have a psychologically based information processing system. This can be compared to other bodily systems such as digestion in which the body extracts nutrients for health and survival. The information processing system processes the multiple elements of our experiences and stores memories in an accessible and useful form. Memories are linked in networks that contain related thoughts, images, emotions, and sensations. Learning occurs when new associations are forged with material already stored in memory. So when a traumatic or very negative event occurs, information processing may be incomplete, perhaps because strong negative feelings or disassociation interfere with information processing. This prevents the forging of connections with more adaptive information that is held in other memory networks. For example, a rape survivor may know that rapists are responsible for their crimes, but this information does not connect their feelings with that. She is to blame for the attack. The memory is then dysfunctionally stored without appropriate associated connections and with many elements still in process. When the individual thinks about the trauma or when the memory is triggered by similar situations, the person may feel like she is reliving it or maybe experiencing strong emotions and physical sensations. A prime example is the intrusive thoughts, emotional disturbance, and negative self-referring beliefs or post-traumatic stress disorder. So information processing continued. Shapiro's process that EMDR can assist to be successfully elevated and alleviated clinically complaints by processing the components of these contributing distressing memories. These can be memories of either small T's or large T traumas. Information processing is thought to occur when the target memory is linked with other more adaptive information. Learning then takes place and the experience is stored with appropriate emotions able to appropriately guide the person in the future. So who should seek the use of EMDR? So this treatment was developed specifically for individuals who have a trauma disorder or who struggle with their trauma experiences. Trauma is more common than often perceived, so it is well suited for a variety of people, victims of any type of abuse, witnesses to abuse, or violence, those dealing with loss or grief issues, victims of natural or man-made disasters, or war veterans, and more. Sorry if you hear my dog snoring. So what are the phases of EMDR? So EMDR therapy involves attention to 3 time periods: the past, present, and future. Focus is given to the past, distributing memories and related events. Also, it is given to current situations that cause the stress and to developing the skills and attitudes needed for positive future actions. With EMDR, these items are addressed using an 8-phase treatment approach. During EMDR treatment, the client will focus on traumatic memory while their eyes track the therapist's hands movements. This bilateral simulation is related to the rapid eye movement, REM, sleep functions, and helps the client process their memories. In contrast to standard PTSD treatments, EMDR not only closes mental wounds, but it also transforms them into personal empowerments. So, phase 1 is history and treatment planning. The first phase is a history taking sessions. So the therapist assesses the client's readiness and develops a treatment plan. The client and therapist identify possible targets for EMDR processing. These include distressing memories and current situations that cause emotional distress. Other targets may include related incidents in the past. Initial EMDR processing may be directed to childhood events rather than adult onset stressors or the identified critical incident if the client had a problematic childhood. So clients generally gain insight into their situations. The emotional distress resolves and they start to change their behaviors. The length of the treatment depends upon the number of traumas and the age of the PTSD onset. Generally, those with a single event adult onset trauma can be successfully treated in under 5 hours. Multiple trauma victims may require a longer treatment time, which I thought was really interesting because I was like, 5 hours just seems like such a little amount of time. So I was like, that is so crazy to me. So then we move on to phase 2. So phase 2 is preparation. During the second phase of treatment, the therapist ensures that the client has several different ways of handling emotional distress. The therapist may teach the client a variety of imaginary and stress reduction techniques. The client can use during and between sessions. This stage is also used to foster trust between the therapist and client. The therapist will explain the EMDR process in great detail so the client will be informed, relaxed, and confident during treatment. The goal of EMDR therapy is to produce rapid and effective change while the client maintains equilibrium during and between sessions. So phases 3 to 6, these 4 phases are explained under the terms assessment, desensitization, installation, and body scan. Phase 3 to 6, a target is identified and processed using EMDR therapy procedures. So these involve the clients identifying 3 things. 1, the vivid visual image related to the memory, a negative belief about self, and then related emotions and body sensations. In addition, the client identifies a positive belief. The therapist helps the client rate the positive belief as well as the intensity of the negative emotions. After this, the client is instructed to focus on the image, negative thoughts, and body sensations while simultaneously engaging in the EMDR process and using sets of bilateral stimulation. These sets may include eye movements, taps, or tones. The type and length of these sets are different for each client. At this point, the EMDR client is instructed to just notice whatever spontaneously happens. After each of the stimulations, the clinician instructs the client to let his or her mind go blank and notice whatever thought, feeling, image, memory, or sensation comes to mind. Depending on the client's report, the clinician will choose the next focus of attention. These repeated sets with directed focus attention occurs numerous times throughout the session. If the client becomes distressed or has difficulty in the progressing in the therapy, the therapist follows established procedures to help the client get back on track. So when the client reports no distress related to the targeting memory, they are asked to think of the preferred positive belief that was identified at the beginning of the session. At this time, the client may adjust the positive belief if necessary, and then focus on it during the next set of distressing events until it feels true for them. So phase 7 is closure. In phase 7, closure, the therapist asks the client to keep a log during the week. The log should document any related material that may arise. It serves to remind the client of the self-calming activities that were mastered in phase 2. So then there's phase 8, which is reevaluation. The next session begins with phase 8. Phase 8 consists of examining the process that made this so far and the EMDR treatment process, all related history events, current incidents that elicit distress, and future events that are required different responses. If the client has multiple traumas, the phase will identify those areas and the process will begin again with a new target trauma. After successful treatment, the EMDR therapy, patients will achieve psychological reconciliation, relieve distress, and ability to reformulate negative beliefs. So efficiency. So EMDR has a broad base of published case reports and controlled research that supports it as a empirically validated treatment of trauma and other adverse life experiences. Place EMDR in the highest category recommended for all trauma populations at all times. In addition, the International Society of Traumatic Stress Studies current treatment guidelines have designated EMDR as an effective treatment for PTSD. EMDR is one of only 2 or 3 treatments of choice for trauma victims. And then most recently, the World Health Organization has stated that trauma-focused CBT and EMDR are the only psychotherapies recommended for children, adolescents, and adults with PTSD, which I thought was crazy. So this is a positive source that I found on the internet for somebody that had went through EMDR. So EMDR, they said in a quote, EMDR is intense because it begins with working immediately behind the line of sensor defense triggers. EMDR set me free eventually. It's powerful and an extreme therapy that I needed, and no others could get to body memory through my conscious defenses. So that's somebody that had went through it and their thoughts on the EMDR process, which I thought was really cool. And then a negative one I read was, I've never done nor will do EMDR myself. It is dangerous and traumatizing. I've had 3 friends do it. 2 of them committed suicide, and the 3rd is struggling with being traumatized from it with the increased PTSD flashbacks and triggers. So I thought that was interesting because the person that had posted it had never done EMDR. However, they knew people that were struggling after going through EMDR. So this is my slide on why would it work for some and not others. So I found not necessarily a lot of negative things about EMDR. Maybe it's just because it's a new therapy, so I couldn't find a ton of information on it. The people that had posted more posted about like the positive results of it. So, but what I did find is one of the things I found was the key elements for EMDR to be effective is to activate the emotions from the past. The activation normally opens a can of worms. If the clinician is not well versed in trauma, atomic dysregulation, dissociation, positive effect, memory consolidation, or etc., it may not know how to contain all the worms coming out at the same time, like the therapist might not be able to. So even if it's not all the worms, sometimes opening the can may feel too intense or too painful, too disturbing for the people to experience themselves. This person put, I never do EMDR before. My clients have developed a whole set of regulation skills and have increased their tolerance to experience strong emotions without feeling overwhelmed. And then if the therapist doesn't know how to direct the EMDR session to make them safe, the opening of the emotional channels can cause re-traumatize them. Then the client feels worse than before and could be worse. Then those feelings could stay worse than before. The symptoms could increase and could even be put put the client in danger. Many clinicians have been going to EMDR trainings because there are so many people with trauma symptoms, and an EMDR offers a fast and inexpensive option. But the reality of EMDR is only a modality of process traumatic memories, but trauma treatment is much more than just processing. These clinicians really believe that they can just save years of training by applying a formalistic protocol and heal trauma. That doesn't happen. I've said before that EMDR is such a great tool for traumatic memories in the hands of an expert. It's like a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon, but if you put a scalpel in the hands of a psychotherapist, it can be lethal. So basically, this person just talked about how like you need to be able to know how to activate, you need to be able to give these clients the resources in order to help them regulate the emotions that are happening, the skills that are that can keep it from becoming too overwhelming. And then on top of that, like being able to control how many, like in the metaphoric world of like controlling the worms that are coming out, like there might be too much that is like coming out and it's hard to put a lid on it. So that's what it's saying is like in order to you have to be a good EMDR therapist. You need to go through your trainings. You need to know how to use the regulation skills with your client. You need to know how to cap the worms, not let a whole bunch come out. And you need to know how to make sure that you're talking about an appropriate amount of trauma before making it any worse and having their trauma then be re-traumatized. So EMDR works similar to the process of removing a splinter. So this is another person has wrote this about EMDR and why it maybe won't work. So when a splinter gets stuck in you, you'll have to utilize tweezers to pull it out. And in a similar light, if your skin has healed over that splinter, it might be necessary to make a small incision in order to remove that splinter. EMDR works on the principle that there are things from your past, present, and worries about your future that are holding you back from achieving your goals, and those things need to be removed like splinters before true healing can occur. As I tell my clients, EMDR can make things more painful following a session, especially if you're working on a new painful splinter. What's important to remember is that this is all part of the healing process. Even if things get worse for a moment, that moment will not last and you will be better than before. I've said it in each of the other paragraphs, but I'll say it again. Your therapist has been trained in these things and will have taught you skills before you begin the process in order to meet any new pains that elevate during the first few processing. So that's just basically talking about how like, again, like you need like the regulation skills in order to help your client process these memories, and they need to have those skills in order before you go through their traumas. So this is an interview I had with one of my friends. She is currently in EMDR. So I did an interview with her so she could tell us about her experience in it, and you'll be able to see that through this recording.
My therapist has explained to me a little bit how it works, but basically throughout our lifetime, we are creating pathways in our brain. Experiences happen to us and they create a pathway. So let's say every time I go to the store, I step on a piece of gum, then I'm going to think that every time I go to the store, I'm going to step on a piece of gum. So that's kind of like just an example of how those pathways can be formed. So when we have a traumatic situation, we relate to EMDR, we might have certain reactions to certain types of situations. So the point of EMDR is really to rewire those pathways, take away the pathways that were formed out of trauma, out of a bad experience, and make it go somewhere else so that we are not triggered. And so those thoughts or beliefs that that were formed when we did have a bad experience, they're also taken away. So really, it's creating different pathways to relieve trauma and trauma symptoms and negative beliefs about yourself is my understanding of it.
That was good. Thank you. Why did you choose EMDR?
I chose EMDR because nothing else is working. I have a lot of complex trauma in my life, compounding trauma, I would say, in my life. And I think that I could see the effect that it was having on my life, the negative effect. And I had been in talk therapy for 6 years. And I really just started feeling like there needed to be something different. So EMDR, I just kind of heard about it. And I also heard about brain spotting, which I tried and didn't really like as much, but I tried EMDR with one therapist and it didn't work. And then I was connected with a different therapist who really is passionate about her practice and practices it every single day with all of her clients who want to do EMDR. And so the EMDR that I've been doing with her has been working really well.
That's awesome. Thank you. So are there any signs that EMDR would work for you? Like if you were talking to other people about doing EMDR, what do you think are some signs that it would work for them?
Yeah. EMDR. Oh wait, did you say, do I feel like it's working?
I'm asking was there any signs that you knew it would work for yourself, or if you see other people facing trauma, do you see that is there some kind of sign that you feel like it would work for them, in the way of people trying to do it? Would you recommend it for people that are experiencing mostly just trauma, or is that kind of how you see it?
I think I would definitely recommend it for people who have experienced big trauma teas. I think it's super necessary for them to be able to help their brain kind of get back to normal state and not experience triggers. I think it's also, even people with little T's, I think everyone can benefit from EMDR because we all, have bad things that happen to us and we all have negative beliefs, and EMDR can help with that. I think it just, with people with issues that maybe are more major life disruptions, it takes a little longer. And people with shorter or smaller ones, it would take a shorter amount of time.
Yeah, thank you. Was there any preparation that was needed before getting into the EMDR process?
Yeah. So my therapist, there's different things that people have done with me and that I know that people can do. Sometimes they do this thing called resourcing where they have you create a safe space in your head. It's a place that's peaceful to you where you want to go, maybe a cabin that you have or something like that. And you can go there when you're doing EMDR and it becomes too much. They also have, my therapist will do this really cool thing that I love. When I do EMDR, I often get trauma headaches. It's in the back of the head and then it kind of comes forward. And they're extremely painful, and it usually means that you're disassociating. And so what she'll do is we'll just stop and we'll think about okay, give the pain a color, and then she'll we'll imagine it, we'll pour it out. Sorry. Sorry about that. We'll pour it out into a jar, just kind of visualizing taking that pain out and then pouring it. I usually just pour it in Lake Michigan, honestly. And then it washes away. And so there's little things that you can do. They all seem, in my opinion, I would be no way that works, but it actually does work really well. And there's also different parts therapy we work on too, which also can be a resource. So if I'm feeling sometimes when I do feel like I'm disassociating and I have that really bad headache, she'll say, okay, I think it's one of your parts is, and parts refers to like people like past yous, I almost feel like. So younger you, maybe when something happened, or an older you, or maybe you have a 15-year-old version of yourself. And those parts, when a certain traumatic event happened, you go and visit them. And so when I'm feeling that pain, she'll say, okay, sounds like it's a part, let's go back. So they're all in this safe place that you've created. And so you kind of, it's really cool. It's very imaginative. And so you talk to them and you see like where, like what's wrong and who is upset and why are they upset and what do they need and how can I help them. And it's very funny as it may sound, because as someone with very like compounding trauma, I would have never thought that that would have worked, but it definitely does work. And yeah, so those are different things that people will do to help.
That's really cool.
Before you do EMDR.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. It kind of sounds like dreamy, like in a cool way, you know?
Yeah.
My next question is just what was the process of EMDR? So like once you had the preparation, what was the next like kind of steps that you followed?
Yep. So once my therapist, I'll talk about two different processes. I had a therapist who definitely did a lot of what she called resourcing with me, which is kind of building those safety things. And then she would start EMDR. But I had another therapist who honestly worked way better with me, and she just started EMDR pretty much right away, and then kind of did those things as we go. But really what it looks like is I think normally, I think what's appropriate is maybe there's like a session or two where you kind of get to know like what's going on with that person, what trauma like they've experienced, and then giving them those tools, helping them know what to expect, which my therapist did with me. And then she, you can either do it with like a sound. It's like there's a screen, at least for virtually on the EMDR that I do with my therapist. There's a little ball that goes across a screen on my laptop, and it just hits one side and then the other, and it just makes this little like sound like. And I usually close my eyes, and then you just kind of let the memories come up, and you just let your brain kind of do its thing. So the process is very simple. It's more of just establishing, I would say, who like the client is, what they're kind of working towards, and then giving them those resources, and then starting the process itself, which also can also hold. Some people in my other therapy, some people have little paddles that they hold and they vibrate. But really what that's doing, the sound and the vibration and the sight of that ball, it's activating the left and the right part of the brain. You can also do it by just taking your hands and like just tapping on your leg slightly. The faster the sound or the buzz or the tapping, the faster your brain will process, which can sometimes be good, but it can also be bad, because if you're processing fast, it can be more triggering. But if you process slow, it's slower. So yeah, that's kind of the process in a bigger explanation.
Oh, that was good. Thank you. So how would you explain your experience with EMDR?
To somebody else?
Yes. Like, would you say that it's like, how do you feel like it's helped you? Do you feel like people should do it?
I feel like it is very helpful. I think I would tell somebody that was interested to really make sure that, I think it's a newer therapy. I think it has the potential to just do so many amazing things in people's lives. Sorry. But the right person, you really have to watch, like, you really have to make sure that your therapist knows what they're doing, because it's not going to work if they don't do it right. I think it can work for everyone, and I think it can just help people with trauma so much, but the therapist really needs to know what they're doing. But I would totally recommend it to seriously everyone. Even if you feel like you've only experienced some little piece in your life, you should definitely do it, because it is really helpful. And the clients I work with a lot of clients in refugee foster care, and they have so much compounding trauma, and I think if EMDR was a more widely practiced thing, we would have a lot more people experiencing less, I think, symptoms related to trauma, like less complex PTSD, less PTSD. And so, yeah, highly recommended to everyone. And for therapists thinking about different things to get licensed in, definitely do that.
Thank you. So sorry. So how do you think it has affected your trauma experience? So like, do you feel like your trauma has gotten better throughout the sessions that you've been in?
Yes, I have seen so much of a change in my own life. I used to be very afraid of like people breaking into my house. So I would take, every time I would shower, I would take pepper spray in the bathroom with me and lock the door, which is just kind of absurd, but I didn't really think that it was strange. It was just what I would do. And I don't do that at all anymore. I still lock the door, but I don't really take my pepper spray around with me in the house. So that's great. And even in little things like how you view yourself, I think a lot of trauma can make you, can lower your self-esteem and make you feel not valued. But EMDR has totally helped increase my self-confidence to the point where I feel like I'm able to draw very, very healthy boundaries with people because I know my worth and I know kind of who I am more, and I'm not as hard on myself. I think what I hope to see too in the future is maybe, I guess I don't really know what I want to see. I'd have to think about that a little more, but yeah, I still do have things to work on. And my therapist and we have goals written down. I don't really remember them at this moment, but yeah, definitely, I would say like a 50 to 70% change.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, so happy for you. And then, do you feel like any other therapy has been beneficial to your trauma? Or do you feel like it's mostly been like the progress has been in EMDR?
I think that when I was younger, I was just doing talk therapy, which was helpful. And I still remember some of the conversations that I had. But I think if you really want to get to the root of your trauma, EMDR is the way to go. I think I don't want to discredit any of the therapy that I did before, but I do wish that I had done EMDR sooner because I think a lot of people can make decisions out of, their trauma experiences and kind of where their brain is at. And hopefully with EMDR, that just kind of goes away. And so, yeah, I think talk therapy really helped process some things in my life when they were happening and right after, but EMDR is really where I know that I'm going to experience full healing, which is just incredible.
That's awesome. And then what techniques do you use in session? So you said that you use like the
light.
Yeah.
The light and the sound. Yep. And then people have tappers. And then my therapist will sometimes tell me to tap on my own. Like I'm just sitting down, my legs out, and I'll tap on my knees maybe. Yeah, those are the different things. Really, all you need to do is be activating the right and left side of the brain. So it's any type of like movement and doing that, we'll do that. I can't remember. One time I think she said that even walking activates the left and right part of your brain, but I can't remember. But that's interesting. Anything that does that is what they use.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's cool though.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then has there been any negatives to doing EMDR?
I think with EMDR, you will, I think it can just bring up a lot. It's a hard therapy because you're really sorting through your brain. So there's days like when you do it that you feel really terrible, or there was a day when I did it and I didn't quite like fix the dissociation that I was experiencing, and I was dizzy for seriously 2 hours. So it can be, I think the negatives are very temporary depending on your session. Now my sessions, because I've done it for a couple months now, my sessions are kind website, which is great because I think that means I've really been working through it. But at first, people who will start to do it, you experience, you're going to be crying a lot probably in your session. You're going to be not feeling the best. But after you kind of work through that, you do experience just positive. I will say that on my days that I do EMDR, I'm never really planning on doing anything like super social after, or if I am, I just make sure I can take an hour to kind of calm down after the session, because it can be kind of hard to bounce back. But other than that, just positive. No like negatives that would deter you away from doing it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And then, what would you say to others thinking about doing EMDR?
I would say 100% do it. But I will say what my therapist told me, when looking for an EMDR therapist, you want to make sure that they've gone through, there's levels of EMDR, I think 1, 2, and 3. You want to make sure that they've gone through all the levels, that they've practiced it consistently in their practice 90% of the time. I don't remember what the other one was. But you just want to make sure, just because somebody says, I'm an EMDR therapist, I would really be careful of that, because I was an EMDR therapist with the goal of doing it with her, and it didn't really work out. She wasn't practicing it, so it took a lot of my time and money. But it's such a wonderful therapy. I really hope that it'll be used more widely, because I think it has potential to really, really help people. And so if you're thinking about practicing it, I think you should do it too, because it's really something you need to experience. So definitely just look up some EMDR people in your area and give it a try.
Thank you. And then lastly, why don't you think it would work for others, but it works for you?
I think I've heard people say, oh, it didn't really work for me. And I don't know I don't know too much, if it only works for certain times. I don't think that's true though. So I think it has potential to work on everyone. I think it depends on what the therapist is doing. Maybe if it's not working for someone, I would wonder, what setting were they doing it in? What were they using? How were they being prompted to think? Yeah, because I definitely did have 2 different experiences with EMDR. And so that, goes to show how sometimes the therapist can do it in a way that helps, and sometimes somebody can do it in a way where they're not as versed in practicing it, so it's not working for the client. But I think everyone's brain has the capacity to be activated in that way, and then to kind of go through the memories and get all that stuff out, and bring them down.
Yeah, that was good. Well, thank you, Kira. Appreciate all your time and being part of my video.
For sure. Thank you so much, and to all the students out there. I just wish you the best. We need therapists so bad. And EMDR is coming from someone who has experienced it. It is life-changing. So I cannot recommend it enough.
You rock, girl.
Thank you.
So that was my video that I did with one of my friends about EMDR and what her experience was with it. And then onto the next slide. So what's the verdict? So research shows that 70% of EMDR participants achieve a good outcome in 3 active treatment sessions. Overall, from the sources I found, I was only able to find 1 negative thought, and it was from someone who had not even tried it. So it was that one that I read earlier, where they hadn't tried it, but they knew people that did, and the experience didn't work out really well for those their friends. More than likely, there are people that have had bad experiences with EMDR not working, but have not took their experience to an online platform just because EMDR is so new. There might just not be so much research on the components on why it wouldn't be working, and experiences on why it hasn't worked for people that have done it. And then, so the verdict that I came up with is, as research shows online, there are more positive experiences than negative experiences that I could find. So that's what I kind of left with is it looks like for the majority it works. And there are some people that it doesn't work for. And it could come into play with like what the my friend Kira was talking about with like or those other resources on like people talking about why it wouldn't work, those reasons like maybe therapists are not using that most adequate tools to help people to be able to achieve EMDR in the way that they should, like process the way that they should. So that's kind of what I came up with as my verdict. But I did think it was really interesting to go through all of this and to be able to kind of see what was out there on whether it does really work or not, because most of my experiences I'm talking to people like my friend, obviously, and then just like talking to other people that have like that are EMDR therapists, all seem very passionate about it, that it works. So it was kind of cool being able to see opposite sides and like why it wouldn't work, because I never really knew those sides and understood that. So that was really cool to me. And then I just did a thing. If it doesn't work for you, you can use any of these forms for trauma. So like prolonged exposure, CBT, psychodynamic psychotherapy, and stabilization. So if EMDR doesn't work, we got other resources that we could try. And yeah, and then my last page is just for resources or references, and just what I use and where all my sources came from. So yeah, I hope you got to learn something new and appreciated the EMDR take on if it works or not.